from what I understand, there's like 2 types of trees. And I guess I don't understand it very well. From the reproductive version of like a pine tree versus a tree with leaves, coniferous and non-coniferous trees. Whew, glad I got that. And trees are naturally self-pruning. They'll actually drop their branches. So like if you're going through like the pine forest of Pine Barrens of Jersey, you'll notice that, why are these branches on the ground? And they're all just like growing up to the top. It's like they're trying to get that light and that oxygen. But there's an interesting part about trees and their regrowth is that those pine needles, when there's a natural burning on the forest floor, like a fire, there's like a small forest fire, it causes a release of the sap in the pine to open up, and it causes it to fertilize in that area. So, when they do control forest burning, it's really beneficial.
Yes.
Cleaning the floor up. It helps, other things. You almost need to like wash the area out.
Well, I mean, that's what was happening before us humans took over the world.
Before we exacerbated
you had mass amounts of cleanup.
Yeah.
Even volcanoes were great because that volcano ash would just, like in Washington State, whenever Mount St. Helens went. And then a long time ago, when Mount Rainier, because that's a volcano, I mean, that's like tons of, metric tons. And I know the Philippines experienced this. But we talked about that in our Philippine episode. But whenever you look at all of that nutrient dense lava and how it counteracts with the soil, it just you can go to Mount St. Helens. It's so cool. I mean, that was in the 80s. And right now there's these huge tall trees and very beautiful and elk running around.
Think about it around here. We got really fertile stuff. We have these big, heavy, cottonwoods, just soaking it all up. If there was a higher water content here in New Mexico, this place would be phenomenal. Like really, like lush.
Yeah.
I mean, phenomenal. But the earth naturally has had its progression of forest fires, and especially in the boreal forest region up to the bottom of the Arctic region area. And, they have their fires, but the thing is we've exacerbated with global warming with a much drier climate in areas where it already is dry. And so, combating the natural release of carbon dioxide into the air from this burning event has become a lot more difficult, and we've increased the amount of carbon dioxide that is occurring globally because of how we as human beings are affecting that. But there's an interesting little positive note in the data that we need to touch on.
Yeah, and that's why, I mean, this just shows you how far-reaching data is, and how, and our philosophy here at Tartle, and how we can help humanity and serve humanity through data.
Yes.
And here's, and the article says this, a rare positive climate news as global wildfire recedes. And we look at, for us at Tartle, climate news, we're watching and listening, and anything with data.
Yeah. Any of the major things that are impacting, the longevity of us as a race.
Yes.
We're focusing on.
Yeah, we want to focus on that, and that's where we want our efforts to go for data.
Yeah.
Despite wildfires ravaging vast swaths of land around the world, the amount of carbon dioxide emitted by burning forests actually fell in 2020. So I want to see, like we always do, I want to see how they got to the data, what were their processes, and then, what is the news, good or bad?
Yeah, they give you the headliner, and then, all right, now give me the story that builds up to that point.
So we know, especially if you're in the United States, wildfire in California, northern San Diego County in late December, there was, 7,000 residents were evacuated. And then we see this dystopian images of wildfires ravaging, and we see cars driving out and it's just burning red everywhere. We saw the drone footage of San Francisco with it red. I experienced that when I went to Seattle.
It's 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's completely black outside, like it's midnight because of the ash, smoke.
The amount of carbon dioxide emitted by burning forests actually fell in 2020. So how did they get there? Atmospheric scientists at the European Union's, how do you say this? Copernicus Climate Change Service.
Yeah, Copernicus. Nicholas Copernicus.
Yes, yeah, there we go. So here's how they do it. They use satellites to take pictures and collect air quality data from hotspots around the world. Mm-hmm. So despite this year's widely shared images of the raging infernos, which disrupted economies from Australia to the U.S. West Coast to Siberia, the amount of land that went up in flames declined.
Yes.
And it's a great way. I think that's, to me, go ahead.
What if we've already, just consider this. The stuff that would typically burn, we've already burnt it and it hasn't grown back.
Yeah.
So maybe less of it is going up in smoke.
Yeah,
do you understand what I'm saying?
Deforestation.
Yeah. Say we've deforested, or we did already have a bunch of burning. Now there's just less to burn.
Yeah, less to burn.
You know what I mean? If I like to think about the inverse of how the data story's been told, in percentages worry me sometimes.
Yes.
So
That's why I'm always like, they had a video on YouTube the other day, and a guy had planted like 5 million trees or something like that. You know, of course, I click on that because it's like one person planting 5 million. You know, and Google talked about that. I was reading, you know how they have talks at Google where this guy was saying, instead of building a military drone, why don't we build drones that can plant trees? Because they can do that. They can drop them off, plant them. You know, it's very easy to plant a little fir tree or
it's because
pine tree.
It's because $1.5 trillion census data is falsified. It's all going towards government spending.
We just had an episode on that. If you want to hear us at our worst, we were on fire.
Yeah, we
were just upset about the data.
Data
quality is really important to us at Tardo.
It's the number one. It's almost like one of the number one things. Data quality, truth. I don't want lies. You want me to act on lies and a hunch?
No,
that's just a recipe for failure.
But I like how they came up with the data, the satellite to take pictures, and now we know. You know, I mean, we talked about this with the Chile, you know, in Chile with the Rubin Observatory, and how these cameras are just amazing in the way that these satellite cameras are taking pictures. So you know, they're taking what we view. They have machine learning languages that they look at the picture how we wouldn't see it as looking at a picture, but that machines easily be able to learn it. So literally millions. Yeah, which is hard to even fathom in your brain, but that's what's happening.
They're taking snapshots of time, and they have the ability to compare it rather than us. We're like, take me a picture now and what it looked like 10 years ago, and you're like, oh, that's very dramatic. But it can see those very small changes.
And then being able to get air quality data, you know, which they're doing great at that. And so they can put this air quality data in these, they can get in these hot spots around the world and then decide. While areas such as the Arctic Circle and Western United States suffered wildfires of unprecedented intensity and emissions. 2020 was one of the lowest years for active fires at the global scale. This monitoring service reported this has led to a further decline in emissions following a continuing trend of the past 17 years.
Which is nice.
To reach their conclusions, scientists used satellites to measure the amount of heat that was radiated by fire hotspots around the globe. And then near real-time data, so
it's lagging.
Yeah, which is fine. I mean, it's still accurate information as long as the sensors are good.
Yeah, you know, for some satellites, it's either in a fixed position or you have to wait for the world to spin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And observations are used to calculate the amount of carbon emitted globally. About 10% less carbon dioxide. Think about this: 1,690 million metric tons was discharged from burning forest fires in 2020 compared to the year before.
Can you imagine trying to lift that up?
How many tons are in a bulldozer? I mean, in a big truck. Is it eight
Maybe
tons?
8 tons.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How many dump
metric
trucks?
tons of just an element.
Yes. Carbon dioxide. Yeah.
What?
Just imagine how many. Just think of all these dump trucks full of this.
And think
and where do we go with it?
If you go to a chemist, you're like, can you tell me how much an oxygen molecule weighs? And they're like, well, you can't, you know, I can tell you, but you can't really put it in the palm of your hand and feel it. But you're talking metric tons? Like, that is insane. Could you imagine how many molecules that would have to be to create that much weight?
Yes. And this European Union Climate Change Service, so they took the data and they said, well, how, and the senior scientist there, Mark Parrington, and this is what their conclusion was. And I thought this was interesting. They said that the emissions across the world have been lower due to better fire management and mitigation measures.
Yeah, no, and that's fantastic because we're learning.
Yeah.
And a mitigation measure is also...
To me, this is truth, and I want to talk about this.
Yeah, like how do in Massachusetts, where I grew up for a good majority of my life, we had fire breaks. It's these huge dirt areas that separate the state into like specific blocks so that if you do have a forest fire, it's only going to burn this area rather than burn the whole state down. You know, that's a fire mitigation technique, you know, and also the way we're doing this with the data, and it's fantastic, is we need to realize that beyond the natural cycles that the earth is going through, we can analyze the data of our impact and our consumption and our behaviors in our daily life and how that systematically affects a forest fire burning in the state of California. So what I'm doing in New Mexico or Canada or Brazil is offsetting dust that is carried, bird migration, weather patterns, and that's making that area drier, even though I'm bombing around my car in southern Sudan. That is an important aspect of that data. Data shows you the reach, the impact, positive or negative, with what we are doing. And I love the fact that they have this focus, and it's a positive focus from this analysis by taking a macro view of satellites to analyze what is going on. But it's also very important, even though that data may be real time, it's important to understand what behaviors are causing that to happen outside of natural events that are happening on this planet. And 99% of that, it's maybe less, over 50%, I'd say, with just natural changes, is probably, akin to what we're doing as human beings.
Yes. And I think what we need to understand, and through this article, is that the responsibility lies
With us. Yeah. And it lies with the information we create and how we analyze it.
Yes.
And how we bring that back to solve issues like this specific one here. I think it's fantastic that there's a decrease in carbon dioxide, but what is the true progenesis of why that is actually occurring? And why do I have to look for a positive part about a decrease in carbon dioxide and fires are burning? I don't want any of the fires to burn. We need to look to how we are causing and exacerbating it rather than measuring it after it's already burning.
Yes, and one way I was thinking of how the Tartar Marketplace could work with this is to get these experts together, and I imagine there's tens of thousands, maybe even 100,000 that are experts in wildlife management, and then to survey them, to have them speak to what they feel would be the most important. Collect that data and see what the consensus is on that, and if there's people that agree on things that say these are the 5 biggest things, these are the 10 biggest things, then we can look at that data as being pure because it came directly from them and say, these are the things that we believe we can work on.
Yeah.
And this is what we unite in.
I didn't believe this is things we know we can work on because we're experts and we do it every day. So let's share what we think is the fund. Nobody has any sort of consensus on how medical information should be stored and shared. Why is that? Why do we have no baselines for social determinants of health? Why does it work in the US, but it's not going to work in a developing country? Then it's not really a social determinant of health, is it? It's nonsense. But we need to bring all these people together and we need to test this junk models we put together, frankly, and say that, those really aren't truthful. And if we want to manage a fire, well, we have to see how it's managed globally. Maybe there's a technique in Indonesia with how they're managing fires around their, tropical rainforests that could probably work very, very well here in the U.S. And something we're doing could also be shared with them. Mm-hmm. How do we unlock that value and share that knowledge effectively?
That 80-year-old guy that's been out there doing it for 80 years.
Yeah.
Well, if you just do this, you just do this is how we've... That's so simple.
And
that could be implemented.
That's really interesting.
We could implement... How many times have we seen that?
Yeah. And then someone else who's not even in forest preservation, the scientists come in, I've been studying the behaviors of humans, and I want to make a connection between this data packet and the one that I've been creating. I think there's something here to actually analyze. And now wait a minute, I want to bring in 5 more data packets, and I want to do a cross-analysis of all these different things and say, does that affect forest fires?
Yeah, and instead of blaming that one guy that threw the cigarette out in the redwoods, we always want to blame that or the power line.
Here we go. I'm not going to blame the cigarette. Why are we still making cigarettes? We know it kills us. We know it's good for us, but we still produce it.
Yes.
Is it the cigarette's fault? No. Is it the guy's fault for smoking it? Yes. Is it the person's fault for producing the cigarette? Of course. Stop it. It's stupid.
Right. Yes, exactly.
When I drive by a hospital and I see nurses and doctors outside on a smoke break, come on. I'll stand outside and be like, I don't want you taking care of me. I don't want you taking care of me. If you can't take care of yourself,
right,
how are you supposed to take care of anybody else?
Yeah, and it comes back to the responsibility and those that have the ability to implement responsibility to do it and to do it effectively.
Yeah.
And with the best means possible in 2021. And we know the best way to solve these problems is through Tartle.
Is through using Tartle. We're not just saying that because it's us. We're saying it because it's the only thing that's made the most sense up until now.
Yeah, and I want people to understand it's not us because we're wanting to filter all data through us or whatever. It's us because we know that our intention and the model is good.
It is good. And we know that we are trying to solve these most pressing problems that we have. And if we've created a really effective tool for doing so, why wouldn't we want to push that out there?
Yes.
Why wouldn't we want to share to people, be like, hey, have you used this mining pick yet? Have you used this type of cell phone or whatever the heck you want to call it? We've reinvented the shovel. It doesn't matter, but look at how using this is going to solve these problems right now. If we're looking at a 70-year timeline before this whole thing goes up in flames and we wipe ourselves out as a species, no joke, okay? maybe we should just hop on this tool right now. Maybe we should just use it. Maybe we should really connect with one another and be very collective in our information and our data to solve this problem. It's not affecting me in Ethiopia, but what I'm doing is, killing 30,000 birds in the northwest coast of the United States or Canada. I should probably jump on that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree.